computer because we are trying to develop our YouTube channel now. So we're putting all the wonderful events that are happening this week for Neurodivergent Birth Awareness Week online so that you can access them at any time as a recording, and you can hopefully share them as well with other people who might benefit from watching them as well. I'm just going to share our slides as well, because Sally and I are going to be sort of co-hosting this session all about neurodivergent parenting and mental health. So, Sally, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I am Sally Bunkham. I'm currently the interim CEO of the PANDAS Foundation, but our lovely actual CEO is coming back in January, so that's not for much longer, which I'm delighted about. I'm so happy she's coming back soon. But my other hat is Director of Communications and Partnerships for the charity. I'm also a mum. I've got two autistic daughters. One is autistic and she has ADHD, and the other one diagnosed with autism, suspected ADHD as well. They're 10 and 11. So I've had a journey, a right old journey. I'm
All
sure a
right.
lot of people on this webinar have also had a right old journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots to say, lots to think about around neurodivergent parenting and mental health, I suppose, because there's so much overlap and it's so
Yeah.
relevant. So yeah, I'm so delighted to join you today. Thank you for
Oh,
having me on.
thank you, Sally. Very delighted that you can join us. I think because we've both spoken quite a bit, haven't we, about our parenting journeys in terms of parenting neurodivergent children, and we feel
Mm-hmm.
so strongly that this kind of space for validation is much needed. So that was why it was really important for us to have this as part of Neurodivergent Birth Awareness Week. Obviously, this topic is not particularly birth related. It kind of is the sort of, I suppose, what happens next
Yeah.
conversation. But I think it
Mm.
is so important to include that because, well, for lots of reasons that we're going to sort of chat about today. But hopefully, if you are attending this webinar as a parent of neurodivergent children, you'll find some validation in that space and some connection, which can be just so important because we can so often feel isolated in our journeys.
Mm.
So I've only got a few slides, but I wanted to set the scene a little bit, just going back to the perinatal time, the pregnancy, birth, and immediate postpartum time, just to highlight that actually we are, as neurodivergent people, at a higher risk of experiencing mental health challenges during that time. So, for example, if you've been on any of my other webinars this week, this I've been talking about this study quite a bit, but there was a study in 2021 that found that autistic women experience unique challenges during childbirth that contribute to the perception of traumatic birth. I'm not a massive fan of that quote because I feel like the perception of traumatic birth is a bit invalidating in itself, but I would prefer to say contribute to traumatic birth. But also, there's the higher risk of birth trauma, but we're also at higher risk of experiencing postnatal depression and anxiety as well as neurodivergent people. So I think it's important to kind of come back to this because it sets the scene really for our neurodivergent parenting journey. If we've had
Mm.
these difficult experiences perinatally, these challenges with mental health, which may or may not have been recognized and supported, we take that into our parenting journey as well. So I think that's really important to recognize. And mental health is the fourth pillar of support that we talk about at neurodivergent birth, and it's very much impacted by the other pillars. So how we experience things around sensory processing, how people communicate with us, and the accessibility of the information that's communicated with us, and the executive functioning demands that increase exponentially for us when we become parents, these all impact the fourth pillar, which is our experience of mental health. So, Sally, did you want to start off a little bit with kind of telling us a bit about pandas and I'm sure most people are familiar with pandas, but what pandas exists to do as an
Yeah,
organization?
of, of course, yeah. So we're the UK's leading perinatal mental health charity, and that basically means we support all parents and carers really, no matter what time in their journey, we tend to speak to parents mostly during that kind of pregnancy and first year of birth period, but that there's no cut-offs with our charity. You can seek support with us at any time. We really recognise that, many parents might have two toddlers or a toddler and a teenager, and there's still the stresses certainly don't end after that period. With the NHS and other clinical practitioners, they often refer to perinatal as the first year, pregnancy in the first year after birth. But that's with us, that doesn't matter. At any time you can seek support with us. We are completely, the model is really around peer-to-peer support. We have over 150 amazing trained volunteers. They are really well equipped to deal with many different issues, and that's who you will get on the end of the phone if you use our WhatsApp support service, which is open every day between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m, and also our bookable call service. They're our most popular services, where you can go on our website and book a call at a time that's convenient for you. We also have a Thursday night Zoom call where you can get online, a bit like this, in an online room, and chat to other parents who might be going through, difficulties, the same as you, and you can offer support to them as well. We also have a really great network of face-to-face PANDAS groups up and down the country that are growing all the time. But we support people for many different reasons. It's not just about postnatal depression, which is the main reason the charity was founded. We've completely diversified now. So one of the top reasons we talk to people is actually about loneliness and isolation. People that we're always hearing it takes a village. People don't have that village. So they need one, and we can be that village. We talk to people that might be having intrusive thoughts. They might be suffering with OCD. They might have prenatal anxiety, all sorts of things. So yeah, there's no diagnosis necessary to use our services, or even to think you need one. You might just be having a bad day. We're always trying to get that message across, that you don't have to be rock bottom to use our services. In fact, the earlier the better is our approach, because we know that if you get that support early, it can actually be nipped sooner and stop it becoming something more serious. So yeah, that's what we do in a
Amazing.
nutshell.
Thank you so much, Sally. It's always good just to have a reminder, I think, about the different services. And I'm always, kind of struck by how many different ways Pandas supports people, and also the accessibility of those services. Because, as we know, as neurodivergent people, it's not always easy to pick up a phone or to receive a phone call. But there are other ways that you can engage with the support that Pandas offers as well. And I think that peer support, kind of foundational peer support, is just so important, particularly for neurodivergent parents, where we might be feeling that isolation and then some, because perhaps we're in a peer group where we're not seeing our experiences reflected back to us. So,
I agree.
neurodivergent birth, CIC, I'm sure if you're attending the call, then you've been on the website to register. So hopefully you have an idea of what we do. But we basically exist to improve awareness and support of neurodivergent perinatal experiences. And we were so delighted was it earlier in the year? I'm trying to remember what it was, to collaborate with Pandas to produce an online resource. And I've put a QR code here. Hopefully it works, because my tech abilities are not the best. But we produced a resource called Supporting Your Neurodivergent Perinatal Mental Health. So please do feel free to access that. It's online, but it's sort of a guide that's interactive, I would say. You can kind of click on different bits and it takes you to different areas, and it helps signpost to support. And we look at the four support pillars, particularly in relation to neurodivergent perinatal mental health. And can I ask you, Sally, why it was important to Pandas to engage with this piece of work, and to produce something that was specifically talking to neurodivergent parents and families?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we know that there's a real need for it, and we know there's also a lot of confusion, but there's also a lot of overlap. Just the very beginning of your slide there, Victoria, where you said about the perceived risk of
Yeah.
birth trauma. I think what they're trying to say there is that actually people can experience trauma in lots of different ways. So, what might be traumatic for one person might not be traumatic for another. So, for example, just some, a midwife having rubber gloves on and feeling you,
Mm.
there could be real sensory issues that could be absolutely traumatic for one person, but absolutely fine for another. So there's lots of misunderstanding, I think, and it really can contribute to poor mental health, because that
Yeah.
person who's just experienced that might be thinking, why am I finding that so hard? Like, I'm not supposed to find that traumatic, but that
Mm.
doesn't, and it's invalidating for them. So we're really aware of that. We're really aware of those factors that make somebody a bit more at risk. If you are
Yeah.
a neurodivergent parent, it's not inevitable that you're going to have mental health difficulties. Of course it's not, but it does make you more at risk.
Mhm.
And there's so much support that is needed, but also that you could access if you had that information that was available. There are real, as the resource shows, there are some really easy wins to
Mm.
seek, adjustments, reasonable adjustments that could really help you, and also help your health practitioners support you. So I guess our aim is to really support and educate not just the people experiencing it, but the health providers as well. So the resources is as much for health providers, and we know it's getting within, like, we know it's being used in the
Yeah.
NHS, which is amazing. We've had lots of
Amazing.
people talking about how they really are using it within hospitals and within appointments and things like that, which is awesome. But I suppose, and also in a very sort of personal, anecdotal level, the amount of my network who are neurodivergent is
Yeah.
who experience mental health issues in the perinatal period or around that time is huge, and
Yeah.
that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
There's not enough research on it by any stretch, but I know it's there. And if there was really, really, we are beginning to see bits of research now that really backs this up. But I'm just so sure in my gut that there's so much overlap, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because if people are misunderstood, and if they don't understand themselves, like I include myself in that very wholeheartedly, then they're at risk of poor mental health. And I certainly look back at my journey. I experienced late onset postnatal depression.
Yeah.
My kids are autistic. I look back, like, they never, one of them in particular, just never ever slept. It was
Yeah.
just so hard. And I look back now and I think it was because she's very, she has lots of sensory difficulties. And I believe, I could never prove it, because we know you can't diagnose a baby with a neurodivergence, and that's fine. We'd never say
Yeah.
you can. But I look back and I think that has to be something to do with it. And I don't know if it would have helped me at the time knowing that, but I certainly look back now and wish that there was more about it, because there was
Yeah.
nothing. It was
Yeah.
all about the dietitian. It was all about allergy testing and reflux, So yeah, a lot of experience just tells me it's very needed, I
Yeah.
suppose.
It's so interesting actually because I on our podcast, I think it's in season 2, I speak to a perinatal psychiatrist called Dr. Sam Porter. And so he's receiving referrals to perinatal mental health. And it's his strong belief that everybody kind of being referred to his service should be the question, is this neurodivergent, should be asked first, because there's so much overlap between
Yeah,
being neurodivergent and experiencing mental health challenges. And also there's so much misunderstanding and misdiagnosis as well. So lots of people
yeah,
being diagnosed with things like borderline personality disorder and, even schizophrenia, other diagnoses that actually in the long term, it's realized that that wasn't kind of the root cause. So yeah, the overlap, like you say, is just huge.
definitely. And misdiagnosis for both, well, babies and adults, because I know friends who have got late diagnoses of autism. They've been heavily medicated for things like epilepsy.
Yeah,
And they know now that, yes, they might have epilepsy, but a lot of the stuff they were going through was actually just autistic shutdowns.
yeah,
And it's like revolutionary now for them to realize that. And I know I'm not suggesting that my baby could ever have been diagnosed with being neurodivergent as a baby, but she was definitely medicated for really strong, like, anti-reflux drugs,
yeah,
and we
yeah.
gave her milk that didn't contain milk that stank of rubber, that didn't have lactose in it,
Mm.
and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot that happens. It's so misunderstood, like you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that a little bit more, Sally, in a second, because I think we have some very relatable experiences to share. But
Yeah.
if you do download the resource, this is what it looks like on the front page. And we just wanted to kind of touch on a couple of bits. And I suppose the first thing I might say here, Sally, is that this comes with a caveat. So um we have actually been contacted by somebody who, you know, very open to people sharing their thoughts and opinions about this, but who did not like the fact that this resource refers to a neurodivergent baby. The reason being that, you know, actually assessment and ultimately potential diagnosis cannot happen for babies. It's something that happens later on in childhood, in line with the diagnostic criteria. So, the last thing we want to do, and we must be very clear on this, we are not suggesting that if your baby is difficult to soothe, appears to have additional kind of soothing requirements or issues around sleep or feeding, etc., that you should diagnose your baby at all. We're not saying that. But I do think it's really important to recognize that if you're a neurodivergent person, you know, because of genetics, it's very possible that your baby will potentially one day be a child that goes on to have an assessment and potentially a diagnosis. And we have to validate the experiences of looking after infants who, you know, like you have shared, we might be looking at all kinds of different things to try and understand the differences or perhaps some of the upset. I mean, I certainly can relate to what you said, Sally. My autistic daughter was medicated with ranitidine, which they don't do anymore for silent reflux, and lots of other things. And we went down the allergy route to the point where my diet was so restricted that I was really kind of deficient and unwell because I was really trying to understand through breastfeeding her if I was causing any of these differences that we were experiencing. That profoundly impacted my mental health because I was always looking to me as the parent, to me as the breastfeeder. What was I doing wrong? Why was this different to what I could see in our kind of peer group? And there was the question of neurodivergence never was raised or it was never discussed. And I think if we don't discuss it, we risk those impacts on mental health. What do you think, Sally?
Well, I completely agree, and isn't it funny how similar our experiences were, like
Yeah,
down to T. Yeah, because I'm not. Yeah, and we know babies' brains develop. There's so much development to go through before a baby reaches a point where you can diagnose
yeah,
and a neurodivergence. We totally understand that. But I mean, even without, you don't even need to label them neurodivergent. It could be like sensory issues and things
yeah,
like that. I look back and I think, gosh, if that was only, I think about how she is now and how like she has real trouble wearing a jumper and a coat, for example, because she hates the feeling of the two fabrics together. And
hmm,
I think about all the things like, I'd swaddle her and I'd put her in those zippy up things, and I know now, my gosh, that's exactly the sort of thing. Could have just been that like the whole time. So
yeah,
if only someone had maybe even suggested just sensory stuff
yeah,
that,
yeah,
which makes up neurodivergence a lot of the time, that would have been really helpful. But yeah, it was never even, it was not even on our radar.
yeah,
And it should have been because like their cousins, their close cousins are autistic and they were very much diagnosed by that point. So it kind of was on our radar, but
mm,
not. But yeah, I think there's so much I think we've got so far to go in terms
yeah,
of understanding this. I mean, we've got so far to go in terms of understanding um, children whose brains are developed more.
yeah.
So goodness knows we've got a long way to go with babies. But
And
yeah,
in
yeah, well, it's so hard, isn't
It
it?
is. And in terms of, if you don't mind me asking, in terms of that time and, you know, going
Yeah,
through all those things, trying to understand how to better support your daughter when she was a baby, trying to kind of work out it's constant sort of problem solving and puzzle piece putting together, isn't it? And it's really draining in
yeah.
that sense. How did that impact your mental health, Sally, when you were kind of navigating all of that?
Oh, massively, because we have our babies are only, well, they're 10 and 11 now, but they were a year and 12 days apart. So we had them
Yeah.
very close together. So my youngest, when she was going through all these issues where we just couldn't lie her down, she would sleep for like 30 minutes if we were lucky in the night, and then she'd wake up and cry. But it wasn't a cry. It wasn't like you could soothe her back to sleep. She would scream like one of those real sort of I'm in pain screams. And
Yeah.
we just couldn't get to the bottom of what it was. You know, we were trying everything. We'd go to that out of hours clinic so many times. Like my husband or I would just have to pace the streets with her in a sling for hours. You know, we'd have done 10,000 steps by 3 in the morning type thing. You get that buzz. Congratulations, you've done 10. We're like, I haven't even been to bed.
Yeah.
It was just so wearing, and it did make me really ill. Like I got to the
Mm.
point where I didn't recognize myself, and I kind of turned into, I just thought I was turning into a really awful person, because you just feel like your one job as a parent is to at least be able to settle your child and to make sure they're comfortable. And when you can't do that and you've got that screamy cry all the time, it's so detrimental. So yeah, I did crazy things. I like punch walls in the night.
Yeah.
I started to like scream into pillows, or go out into the garden at 3 in the morning and scream into the abyss. It was
Mm-hmm.
really tough, and
Yeah.
I just didn't really recognize myself. And I found that the all the time, like if she did sleep, or if I did get 10 minutes, I would just spend that
Yes.
researching it. What could it
Yeah.
be? Silent reflux. What fixes silent reflux?
Yeah.
Could it be fruit before bed? Like everything, because I was so desperate just to fix
Yeah.
it. And I couldn't believe that all these pediatricians, doctors, GPs, specialists in that, cranial osteopaths, everyone, no one could get to the bottom of it. So it was
Yeah.
just exhausting.
It is
So
exhausting.
yeah, I mean, it's exactly why I do this job now, because
Yeah.
it was completely life changing, life altering. I mean, yeah, I did go to the doctor in the end, and the doctor did diagnose me with late onset postnatal depression. So that in a way was really liberating, because I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't me. I'm actually ill, and if I'm ill,
Yeah.
I can get better. So that was kind of a good thing. And eventually, as she started to get older, it took a long time. She did start to sleep more. I started to sleep more, and I did recover in the end. But I will never ever forget that period, because it was
Mm.
the toughest thing I've
Yeah.
ever gone through. Yeah,
It really, when you're speaking, it kind of the word that kind of comes to mind is like darkness. Like you kind of have this
yeah,
really dark, potentially really dark experience. And I think for me, I wonder if this is relatable. I felt so much fear because I couldn't understand. And like you say, when you're going to professionals for help,
yeah,
and nobody seems to have an answer. And I
get
think,
it.
I am, an autistic person. I like to have a plan and I like to have
Yeah,
answers and I like to research the hell out of everything. So I was
yeah,
going kind of armed with all this research and I was met with kind of confusion and just a real lack of direction, and like I wanted to know,
mhm,
right, what are we going to do next, what's the action plan, because we can't possibly survive like this. And I think
yeah,
that the fact that I was met with that just bred so much fear in me. And there was also the fear of um well, like why can't I do this? Like I don't understand why I can't do this, because millions and millions and millions of people have babies. So why is this such an absolute kind of like
yeah,
disaster? And when we look to our peers, and I don't know if this is relevant for you, I had like an NCT group. I'd done NCT classes and we would kind of meet up and everyone seemed okay. I'm sure there was stuff going on, of course there was, but they weren't having similar experiences to us. So I would kind of
mm,
drive away in tears because I couldn't understand why they weren't having similar experiences, and it just reinforced that fear, and that fear was really detrimental in terms of my mental health. So yeah, did you recognize that, Sally? Did you kind of look around in your peer support group or look to family members and friends and seek validation and then not find it because your experience was different?
totally, absolutely. And it was like I was so misaligned with my peers who had a child at a similar age to mine, because when she started with these massive issues, at first she was okay, but it seemed to be a sort of developmental thing where it started to happen when she was about 4 months old, which, if you cast your mind back to when you had a babies, Victoria, that's the time when they say, oh yeah, that's when they start to develop their digestive system
Yeah.
and everything starts to settle down and the colic settles down. So just at the point where that was happening for everyone else, we were going completely to pot.
Yeah.
And that is when you really can, well, that's when support networks can actually be really damaging. I remember going to M&S to buy something, and the woman at the till said to me, oh, my daughter's got a baby about that age. She
Yeah.
sleeps for 10 hours a night. And I remember just walking out that shop and just bursting into tears and just
Yeah.
thinking, why me? Why doesn't my baby ever sleep? And just little comments like that can
Yeah.
absolutely throw you. And my lovely brother, bless him, he has slightly older kids, and he'd always say to me, just let them get really tired until they drop off on the sofa and then put them up. And like my kids need this routine. Like if they don't
Yeah.
have this routine, then all hell would break loose. I still need a really like solid routine now, like down to like what song you sing before you leave the room, like a really like regimented
Yeah.
routine, and it works. But people just don't understand that sometimes, and it can just be really isolating and
Yeah.
really, really lonely. And then
Absolutely.
additionally, so your world's going to pot. And I think this is why there's so much overlap with neurodivergence and mental health in the perinatal period, because just as your world's going to pot, and if you're neurodivergent yourself, I still don't know officially if I'm autistic. I haven't had time to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so
Sometimes we don't
so
have the executive functioning to get an assessment.
I'm
So,
so like busy with my kids and trying
yeah.
to get them support that I just haven't really gone there. But there's definitely a lot of it in my husband and my family, so it would make sense. But so I do like a routine and I like things in order. But just not only have you got the massive life changing aspects of becoming a parent, but also your routine is just blown apart.
Yeah.
And it's huge, isn't it? You can't rely on all those. Sometimes you've just been coping with this routine that you've created, and if that gets blown apart mixed with a complete lack of sleep,
Yeah.
it's just completely life altering.
It really is.
But yeah, it's really tough. But yeah, I did really notice that people I was talking to were just, what, but she must sleep. What you mean, like she just wakes up a couple of times? I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like
Mhm.
literally every night we can't put her down. Like it was
Yeah.
insanely bad.
And
Yeah.
I remember feeling kind of going back to that fear, actually. I remember feeling the fear in others, if that makes sense as well. Like I remember
Yeah.
we were readmitted quite a few times to hospital, unfortunately. And I remember a real kind of confusion from a midwife, kind of, oh, your baby's really unsettled, sort of comments like that. That it was almost like they were confused as well. And the
Yeah.
fear, yeah, I'm sure they weren't feeling fear, but that fed my fear, the kind of the confusion and the lack of understanding. And I remember
Yeah.
when we, I mean, in hindsight, this was a ridiculous thing to do, but my brother-in-law was getting married, so my husband's brother was getting married, and we went to the wedding with a 7-week-old baby, who um stayed awake for like the entire wedding and was passed around, and the overstimulation must have just been off the scale for her, and we could not then get her to sleep, despite the fact that she had
Mm.
been awake basically all day, and we were doing all these crazy things to try and suit her to sleep, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning by now, and my father-in-law's like, I'll take over, I can do it, you guys go to bed. And eventually by about like 5 a.m. he gave up because, and I could see the fear,
Confusion.
the fear and
Yeah.
confusion, like what on
Yeah.
earth is
Yeah.
going on? And that really fed into how I was feeling. I think
Yeah.
can we touch a little bit? I know you mentioned the kind of exploration of your own neurodivergence and self-identifying as well is, of course, totally valid. But isn't it interesting how so many of us, particularly women and people assigned female at birth, are having babies where our children are kind of getting to an age perhaps where we do seek some support for them to try and better understand them. Perhaps we go for an assessment, perhaps there's a diagnosis, but we also recognize in their experiences that we ourselves are ticking many of the boxes when it comes to the criteria, and we may then ourselves, if it's accessible to us, which unfortunately for many of us it isn't accessible,
Mm.
we may seek an assessment and a diagnosis, and that's certainly my story. I'm now diagnosed as autistic and I have ADHD, but it's such a common story in the neurodivergent parenting community, and it's kind of fascinating, but in itself, that has extra layers of impact on mental health, isn't it?
It does, because it makes you kind of look back and sort of question your whole identity, I think. And it
Yeah.
can be really positive as well. Like I've got so many friends that are receiving their own late diagnoses of neurodivergence and feel completely liberated by it. You know, so they look back and they think of so much of their life that is now explained.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. Like I can't believe the explosion of it.
Mhm.
But it can also make you question yourself,
Yeah.
and yeah, it can be a very confusing thing. I mean, I still don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's just a really, yeah, and it's a really tough thing to navigate in terms of
Yeah.
like what is there a benefit to knowing? There probably is,
Mhm.
but I'm just so wrapped up in trying to get my kids support, you know, in within their schools and stuff like that, that I just haven't even had
Yeah.
the time. And isn't that just a metaphor for parenting? You
This
just
isn't
kind of,
just, yeah.
yeah, like, you know, I'm so wrapped up in EHCPs and um, flexi schooling and stuff like that that I haven't even had time really to think about
Yeah.
me. But being a woman, being an autistic woman, is especially I think quite confusing. Like I do look back to my childhood and how I was taught to be such a people pleaser.
Mhm.
And I look back and I think now about how I get home from social events and I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes me think about a lot and how differently my kids are growing up. Like especially my eldest, she's autistic and she's so proud of her identity
I
being
love that.
autistic. And yeah, she's really, yeah, she talks about it a lot and she has the vocabulary. Like, you know, we'll be in a busy shop and she'll say, oh, I don't like this. I actually feel a bit like I'm going to have a shutdown, mummy. Can we go? And I'll be like, yes. And I think, wow, like being able
Amazing.
to have the vocabulary to say that is amazing. So, yeah, but then I think, gosh, we really missed out on that, didn't we?
Yeah.
We'd have just been stuck in that shop. So, lots of
And
mixed
it's
thoughts and feelings. Yeah.
it's interesting how even, I mean, even having been diagnosed, the people pleasing element is and everything and the masking and everything is so at the forefront of the experience of being diagnosed as well. So
Yeah.
immediately, and I'm still processing it, immediately I feel like an imposter that I have somehow managed to
Yeah.
like hoodwink the whole system. And it was a multidisciplinary team and, led by a clinical psychologist. Like I have completely just pulled the wool over their eyes and convinced them. And then again, in terms of sharing it, this is a safe space for sharing it, but I haven't shared it even with my dad and close family members because I know what the
Mm.
response will be and it won't be a
Yeah.
validating one. So it's just
Same
interesting.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and society's not helping much at the moment with stuff in the
No.
news about overdiagnosis and stuff like that. And oh, everyone's a little bit. Don't you think everyone's a little bit neurodivergent? Oh,
No. Yeah.
so yeah, it doesn't feel particularly safe to
Yeah.
share it. And also, there is still such a kind of like in a way postnatal depression. I always thought, how on earth I can't have postnatal depression because
Yeah.
in my mind, postnatal depression is feeling sad after you've had a baby and not being able to bond with your baby. Of
Yeah.
course, now I know that postnatal depression can manifest in all sorts of different ways. And I'm not saying, by the way, that being autistic is in any way like a condition like postnatal depression. I'm just saying that it's a similar thing in
Yeah.
that my perception of it was
Mhm.
so like you can be just to feel numb. That can
Mhm.
be one of the main symptoms of postnatal depression. You might not be able to cope with everyday chores or
Yeah.
tasks. You can have really severe like anger and rage, which is what I had.
Mm.
And being autistic, as we know, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. It can manifest in so many different ways. That's why it's really hard. Like Victor, I'm sure that's why you're grappling with it a little bit because
Mm.
you're like, oh, that's even though you know, like you're a blooming expert in it, it's still so ingrained in you, isn't
Yeah.
it? What being autistic. Actually, my daughter, they had an assembly in school yesterday about being autistic, and they showed them all a video of what an autistic person might experience going through somewhere. I don't know where it was, like a school or something.
Yeah.
And my daughter was like, it was so interesting, mummy, because I think for a lot of people, they made it look like either a lot worse or a lot better than
Mm,
someone experiencing that. And I thought, you're dead right, because for her, it made it look a lot worse, but for
hmm.
someone else, it might have made it look a lot better, because
Yeah.
everyone's so different, aren't they? So yeah, it's just so the way autism manifests, if you're an autistic person, can just be so
Yeah.
different to another, which makes it harder
Makes
to
it harder.
identify even in yourself. Yeah,
You're only experienced in your own experiences, and so
yeah,
sometimes it can be difficult in terms of yeah, having those validated. Um,
yeah.
I really love what you were just sharing there about your daughter's kind of language around talking about her autistic identity. And this is something that I really it's so important for me to kind of offer to people who are pregnant and are perhaps thinking about, what is parenting going to be like for me? Because I experience some of these things, am I going to feel overwhelmed from a sensory perspective? Is the executive functioning increase in executive functioning demands on me going to be impossible to navigate? Um, People question their ability to parent, don't they? But my experience from talking to neurodivergent parents, and I think as a neurodivergent parent myself, is that we can bring so much to parenting that is positive and compassionate, and we can think out the box. And often we can't parent in a traditional way. And that is actually a very good thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I've had to work really hard to kind of come to terms with that as well. Like, for example, my youngest daughter finds like mealtime really, really hard.
Yeah,
She really hates the pressure of sitting and maintaining eye contact while she's eating, even with her close family. So, like, meals out or Christmas is really hard for
yeah,
her.
yeah.
Um, but yet you are completely surrounded all the time on social media and other places about, oh, it's so important to have a family meal, sit down family meal at the end of the day. And
I always think of those
so
Bisco gravy
uh,
adverts that have kind of like
yeah,
ingrained that in us. Yeah.
and I'm just thinking of my daughter like smelling the gravy and going, oh my god, like all the sensory, you know what I mean? So like it took me, like I would force her to sit there because it was so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
No, we're having a family meal, and you will enjoy it. We'll all cry, but it will be. This is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And for ages that went on, and it was only when the person actually that diagnosed autism diagnosed her as autistic, she said to me afterwards, "You have to accept that your strategies need to be different. It's
Yeah.
okay. You don't have like it makes it a really bad experience for her and you. Why don't you just let her sit somewhere else? And if she wants to have a screen while she eats, just let it be. You have to
Yeah.
parent differently." And the relief, like of having a professional telling me that
Yeah.
was massive. But there's still, I still question it. There's still so
Yeah.
much I question. She's a really picky eater. She finds a lot of foods tricky. Um, so it's that constant battle, of what
It is.
society's telling you versus what's actually best for your child. And yeah, and I still have wobbly days where I lose
Yeah.
confidence and I think, oh no, I'm just using it as an excuse.
Yeah.
I'm just weak. It's really hard,
It's
but
really hard.
the community of Sen parents is so powerful for that. There's a few online groups I'm in, and we all support each other, and that makes me feel better. I've got some really solid Sen fellow Sen parents who I talk to, and
Well,
that really helps.
I love this
Yeah,
quote from you, Sally, which is in the
yeah,
resource pack, and I'm so glad we've got it in there. But you say, we are such a force because we have to be. We are each other's support, and I've never known a community like it. and you're referring to that community of neurodivergent, of parents of neurodivergent children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you, how has that impacted your mental health, being able to connect with other families, with other parents who are navigating some of this stuff that we've talked about?
Oh, really positively. I mean, it is a delicate balance because I must say also that in those groups, there can just be, people are struggling. So a lot of the posts are quite tricky to read.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want to be reminded of all the stuff that could potentially happen and things like that. But it's a double-edged sword, but I have found so much support in there as well. And my goodness, we need it. Now my children now both have EHCPs. Wow, getting those.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the level of research and just education on it that you need is just insane. I mean, it's a system that's designed to make you fall because
Yeah.
it's so complicated. So having that network of people that, I have friends that have got EHCPs, they help me so much with it. And now I help people who have younger kids, maybe who are navigating it. And I feel like there is that real sort of it's your sort of responsibility in a way to help
Mhm.
the next guys coming up because we all know how hard it is. And I think that's what a lot of fellow parents think, and they do then offer that support. It's a bit like our amazing PANDAS volunteers.
Yeah.
PANDAS, we don't offer support for educational EHCPs. That's not what we do.
Yes. Yeah.
But the similarity is that so many of our volunteers have suffered with a perinatal mental health issue. They thought they'd never recover. They do. They're 99.9% of the time, they absolutely do recover. And then when they have recovered, they want to give back and they come and volunteer for PANDAS. And that's why we have this lovely cycle of volunteers. It's why we're never short of volunteers
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they always come back and they want to help and then they support the next load of parents. And it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing. And I think the Zen parenting world is similar to that model as well, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And I hope people on this call, I hope you found a similar network locally to you, because I know that everywhere you're in Scotland, Victoria, that works slightly differently,
Yeah. We don't have
and even
EHCPs, but yeah. Yeah.
no, no. And even in England, each LA will have a slightly different system. So finding that sort of local support is really helpful. I'm in Brighton, and there's a support called Mascot, an online group, and I've just found it really invaluable. And I really hope that there's mirroring style community groups up and down the UK that people can access because it's so vital.
It really is. I was trying to think of um what helps me as a parent to support my mental health as a neurodivergent parent. And
Yeah,
I wrote exactly that. I wrote peer support and connection. And actually, I do think social media has helped me a lot in terms of finding
yeah,
resources and finding support because I don't necessarily have that within my kind of immediate peer group and family. It has required kind of online friendships, and they actually really suit
yeah,
me. I really
yeah, yeah, yeah,
love making friends online.
yeah,
But yeah, the peer support has been vital because I think um, I've always sort of felt the isolation was the worst part, and we were navigating, um, really discovering Thea's sort of neurodivergence about the time we were living in France and during the pandemic. So we were more
yeah,
isolated than ever. And I
mm,
think that really contributed to the struggles that we have. Now we're back in, or we had, now we're back in the UK, when we've got all this understanding, we've been able to kind of access support. And I've, like most of us have read an insane amount of information about how to better support her and understand her. And I think, yeah, that's been key for me. The other thing
mm,
I was going to say that's helped me, Sally, and I wonder if this resonates with you, is this work. Like this work is
Yeah,
so important to me. It is my job. I'm so fortunate that I got some funding that pays me to do it, which is incredible. But that social justice for me, which I think is relevant for a lot of neurodivergent people, that kind of passion around social justice, it's a strong, strong feeling. I see it in my daughter, actually. She's exactly the same in that sense. But being
yeah.
able to channel energy into this work has been hugely important to my mental and emotional well-being. And I'm wondering
Mm.
about you and your work at Pandas and how that's helped you.
Yeah, massively. I mean, it's really aided my recovery actually. It was real like vital part of my recovery, although I might not have known that at the time. Similarly to you, like yeah, that like I just was so outraged that people didn't understand that you could have something like postnatal depression and it manifests that way. I was like, what? Why didn't I know that? If I'd have
Yeah.
known that, maybe I could have got help a lot sooner. And there's probably lots of other people that are experiencing this sort of thing in a similar way to me and feeling really ashamed by it. All the work we do at Pandas now around the lesser known symptoms. So we talk a lot about things like intrusive thoughts that a lot of people don't even understand are a thing. It's actually a way that your brain is trying to keep you safe. And just that knowledge can be so comforting and calming. And like anger and rage, for example, in the maternal period, there's so much stigma and shame around it. And to talk about that now openly and share my story is so cathartic. And
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
that phrase, isn't there? Shame dies when stories are told in safe places. And
Yeah,
I feel that to my bones. That's so true.
absolutely.
Um, and it's absolutely why I do my job now. Like before I had kids, I used to work in a university. Um, so it's completely changed my career. And I love it. And yeah, I still have that passion. But it is really common with neurodivergent
Yeah.
people, I think. And I see it in my daughter. She's just done her practice stats at school and she's found it, although she's done really well, like academically in it, she's found the whole process really tough, like mentally tough, because she likes to make sure everything's done perfectly and she's always so worried about breaking a rule.
Mhm.
So she found it really hard, and I told her that actually there's campaigning groups that are working that are like petitioning the government to scrap SAPs, and
Yeah.
she was like, "Can I write to the government, Mummy?" And I was like, "Yes, you can write to the government." So
I
she's
love
going to write them a letter, and I thought,
it.
"Yeah, you're definitely my daughter."
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, that sort of that self compassion and that sense of justice,
Yeah.
but also that empathy, like because she sees other people, and that's what makes me really cross as well. There's so much misinformation about autistic people not being empathetic, and my God, couldn't I
You
could
couldn't be
not
more wrong.
disagree more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. It's just shown in such different ways.
Yeah,
But yeah, I definitely resonate. We have so much to resonate with each other on
we
Victoria. It's quite
do.
crazy, really.
And you were so kind as well, Sally, to come on the podcast. And if people are interested in the topic of rage, we explore that, don't we, in a bit more detail in the podcast. And we also have Dr. Caroline Boyd on another
Mm,
episode, who is your amazing ambassador at Pandas. And
she's
she talks
amazing.
about rage, maternal rage all the time. And I found her social media content really validating in terms of just being
So
open
good.
and honest about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that anger and rage is a real, when I look back and I think, and I talk to people like Dr. Caroline Boyd, it's such a symptom of being so unsupported and
Yeah.
misunderstood, which is, what neurodivergent people face all the time, but possibly particularly in parenthood and early parenthood. So it kind of all makes sense when you look
Does.
at it like that. For sure. Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, go and give her a follow. She's got great,
Absolutely. Yeah, Dr.
great
Caroline
content.
Boyd. Amazing. Well, Sally, thank you so much. I love talking to you, and I'm so grateful that we've been able to work together with Pandas. Pandas has supported ND Birth from like the first post I think I ever made, and has been a real like ally and friend. So thank you so much. If people want to get
Pleasure.
in touch in terms of accessing your peer support, Sally, what's the best way to get there?
So if you just go to our homepage, which is pandasfoundation.org.uk, so pandas like PANDAS PANDASfoundation.org.uk. You can find there, just go to support services and you'll find all the information about how to access our WhatsApp support or our Thursday night online Zoom support or our bookable call service, and or whether there's a group near you that you might like to attend as well. So yeah, just hop on there and you should be directed appropriately.
That's amazing. Such an important resource. And yeah, we're so passionate, aren't we, about making sure that that peer support is there well
Yeah,
beyond the first year, because like you say,
yeah.
it doesn't stop there. So
And also, we're so passionate about the sort of crossover with neurodivergence. You've done some amazing training with our volunteers because it's so important, and we'll continue doing that, of course. But yeah, just please do reach out if anyone's struggling, because like I said, there's no cut-offs or anything like that. You can get support at any stage in your journey. So please do. Don't think it doesn't apply to you. It absolutely does.
yeah. Thank you, Sally. So we're coming to the end of the session, but I of course want to give people an opportunity to comment or raise their hand. You're more than welcome to put something in the chat if any of this resonated with you. We would love to hear from you. Or if you want to raise the emoji hand, you're welcome to do that as well. Or as I've said before, if you need some processing time and you want to come back to this and you've got a question, you're more than welcome to contact us at info@ndbirth.com or to ask for any resources. I'm just going to check the chat. We've just got a thank you, Valentina. I'm seeing some familiar names who've been with us on a couple of sessions today, so I'm very grateful to you for taking time out this week. And yeah, thank you so much to everybody for continuing to support this week. If you haven't had a chance to look at the program, you can scan the code here or just go to ndbirth.com. I'm trying to think what else we've got tomorrow. Tomorrow we're talking about reasonable adjustments as legal
Sounds good.
requirements and not luxuries. So that's going to be a great session. We are all looking forward to the session on hypnobirthing and the accessibility of hypnobirthing to neurodivergent families. And we also have a session on navigating race and neurodivergence in the birth space from our very own Ruby, who is one of our neurodivergent birth practitioners. And she's going to be talking about her experience as a Black neurodivergent woman. And also, she has hypermobility. She has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that really impacted her perinatal care as well. So do check that out. And if you are doing anything in your workplace, like if you're having a coffee and you're having conversation, please get in touch. You don't have to share photos. I know that's sometimes difficult, but please just drop us an email or a DM with a quick description of what you're up to, because we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sally, and speak to
Oh,
you soon.
pleasure. And thank you for all your work, Victoria. You're doing such amazing things.
Thank
And
you,
thanks for
Sally.
having me.
Thank you very much.
All
Bye bye,
right.
everyone.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.